Hey, welcome everybody to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Craig Domann. Today I've got a guy that's going to be very entertaining, very informative. His name is Dave Wan. Dave is, he's a TEDx talker. He's a speaker. He's a trainer. He's a coach. He really has found a sweet spot in the corporate world in training salespeople how to maybe sell and perform in alignment with their mindsets. So Dave, welcome to Pro Mindset today.
Hey, thank you, Craig. I'm super pumped to be here. I'm super excited to have this conversation.
All right, Dave. So what's your story as it pertains to money?
Yeah, so I grew up in a family where we just struggled a lot financially, and my parents are immigrants of South Korea. So when they came over to America, they just struggled a ton, and I saw all that growing up. And so to avoid what they went through, I thought budgeting and spending less than I make and tracking every dollar and seeing where my money was going was the solution to all the pain and stress and anguish that my parents went through. I thought that was the answer. So I did all that. So I was seemingly on a roll, but inside of me, I still felt like something was off. And I didn't really know what that was. I couldn't name it. It was ambiguous to me. And then when I moved to Colorado back in 16, bought my house, everything was seemingly fine. And a couple of days later, I just hit this first panic attack in a string of panic attacks. And that led me on a 6-year journey of trying to understand why I went through it, even though everything on paper was seemingly good and seemingly better than what my parents went through or experienced. And that led to me understanding that there are emotional drivers that were driving how I thought about money, my behaviors, why I saved and spent the way I did. And understanding those drivers, the root drivers, was a game changer for me. And until you understand that, you can't change your behaviors. So that's my quick summary of my journey with money.
Okay, so what was the worst or most negative emotional driver you had?
For me, it was I'm not good enough. And the feeling of just the emptiness and failure and fear of not being able to achieve some of the goals and dreams that I want to do. Like I just felt like I was a complete failure, despite hitting certain milestones when it came to income and whatnot. And it was this constant hamster wheel of trying to get to that next level. I'd make it to the next level and it's like, it's not enough. And all those emotions were revealed in how I saw my money.
Okay, so I want to ask for clarification because I've got a good friend that has done very well with money, but his approach has always been he didn't have enough. It wasn't he wasn't enough. It's that he didn't have enough. So which one is it? Or is it both? Because they're different. Because when you save money and you're making progress, but you're looking at your savings account or investment account or whatever it might be, and it's not enough. And then the other one is you're in a sales setting and you're in a performance game and you got a chance to make a big commission and you choke because you're not enough. So which one is that for you?
Yeah. So the you're not enough or I'm not enough is internal. The money, the dollar amount not being enough is more external, right? But the internal drives that feeling of the external not being enough or not being good enough or whatever it is. So the internal is what drives it, right? It's not the other way around. It starts with the inside first, and then that impacts the external and the outside.
Okay, there's somebody listening right now that's got to jump off in like 2 minutes. I don't know what they got going on, but they need to hear what you got to say. What? And they're a salesperson, and they're running into a sales call right now. Give them the 1, 2, 3 strategy of you do this. You're going to show up differently. You're going to perform differently. And most of the time, you're going to get different results.
So I like to get behind the what. So I like to get to the why behind the what. So a lot of salespeople tend to have a lot of behaviors that are self-sabotaging. I'll name a few. So discounting before the client even asks for it. Pushing cheaper solutions instead of premium ones. Dodging budget conversations. Over justifying on price. Or even holding on to deals that you should let die because secretly you're afraid of where your next deal might come from. So there's a reason why this is happening. It's not because of a lack of training or your territory sucks or the economy sucks or your clients just don't have money. There's something else going on behind the scenes. So my challenge to salespeople is, what is the emotion What is the mindset behind why those behaviors are happening in the first place? And it all has to do with how you think about money, your perceptions around money, and some of the beliefs that you've had over the course of your life. Whether you think there is enough money in this world or there's not enough money in this world. Maybe you think that you don't deserve money, or maybe you think that talking about money is a bad thing, or maybe you might think that having money is going to lead to no good. A lot of these beliefs that you have with money, how you see money, drives those behaviors that I just talked about. So instead of just saying, I'm not going to discount, or I shouldn't discount, or I should just show up detached or not come across desperate, it's important to understand the why behind the what, so that way those behaviors don't tend to repeat itself.
Okay, let's talk about those money beliefs. Money doesn't grow on trees. The money tree in the backyard doesn't have any leaves or branches on it. All those kind of things. Money, the more money you have, the more problems you have. All those things are like cliches and comments that people pass down. Parents pass it down to their kids. Friends tell friends. In some ways, it's like for parents, it's an excuse for why they can't give them more money, or they don't even think they deserve to have more money to go out on a date or whatever it may be. But for friends, it's to make your friend feel better because they didn't get the deal. So you pacify them like, oh, more money just brings problems. You don't want more problems. Okay. What do you say to all that?
These are beliefs, whether you like it or not. These are things that you've experienced, observed, heard, seen, everything. And they're all happening. It's all information that you're taking into your brain and you don't even know is happening. Right. So it's really important to pause, slow down, take a step back and go, how are these beliefs, how are these thoughts, how are these thought patterns actually impacting me on a day-to-day basis in my sales role? Because in sales, there's money on the line every single time. Every sales opportunity, every touch point, every phone call, every email that you send, every handshake, coffee meet, every little touch point in a sales opportunity in that sales cycle has money on the line. Your job is on the line too, right? How much you get paid out is on the line. And so these beliefs will carry over into those conversations and how you operate within that sales context, right? And so most people just think, by the way, if you know, I'm not a neuroscientist or anything like that, but I know at the very basic level how the brain works. And then our brain at the most simple level is broken up into two pieces, right? You have the emotional brain and you have the logical brain. The emotional brain is firing and wiring since the day you were born. And it's all happening without you even thinking about it. The logical brain is like critical thinking, your ability to process information and talk as logically and rationally as you can, and think logically and rationally as you can. The only problem is we think we're logical beings, which we are when that side of the brain is on, but it's only on 5% of the time. So whenever you hear these like cliche beliefs about money that you've always heard and seen and observed your entire life, a lot of those are actually running in the emotional side of the brain 95% of the time. So how you show up is pretty much on auto drive and default, right? So until you are able to step back, observe, analyze, be aware of what's going on, that logical side of the brain, which is only on 5% of the time, won't be activated. So all these beliefs that you just said, my self-worth is determined by the size of my bank account. Money doesn't grow on trees. Having more money will do you harm. There's never enough money, right? Imagine thinking that you're making a lot of money, but there's never enough money in this world. You're afraid you're going to run out, and so you come across desperate because you need to close that deal by the end of the quarter. These beliefs are running on auto drive, on autopilot, default setting, default mode. So you have to be able to step back and analyze why that's happening and dig into your story to understand those drivers. That way you can work through them and then be able to change those limiting behaviors into more empowering ones.
Okay, let's just go into one of those. Let's say, for example, you are a discounter. You're a salesperson and you apparently don't believe in the product. You don't believe it's worth it. You believe the competition that has a lower price maybe is more suitable for the product that you're selling. How do you get somebody to stop? Like, let's say you're in a sales coaching situation, or you're the sales manager of a team of people and they keep discounting. what do you do? Because let's say you got a whole force of people. What's step one? What do you do? What's the first step?
Well, I think it's first important for them to be aware that it's happening in the first place. Most people don't even know why they're doing that in the first place. Let me share with you an example, a story. There's a company I used to work for. I was the salesperson of the year back in 2022. I did really well in that. I did really well in that role, but there were a handful of opportunities that did not go my way. So there was a client of mine, and I knew that the $1 million service that we had, the $1 million product that we had, would actually be really good for them. It would solve the needs, solve their pain points. It was really good stuff for them. It was really good stuff. But the problem is, I thought they were going to run away. I was afraid that if I revealed the $1 million price tag, they were going to run away. I thought that. And so what I did is technically discount it, but instead of offering them the $1 million service, I ended up giving them the $100,000 product. And turns out, they accepted it. They ran with it. Turns out it didn't really solve their needs, and they didn't renew, and they ended up going to our competitors because the trust wasn't built. Right. And so what I did was I let my own definition of how expensive this is be the client's definition of expensive. I let my own sensitivity around that price be the client's sensitivity around that price. So I unintentionally let the conversation be about me and not them. It has to 100% be about them, not me. And so you have to be able to first be aware why that's happening in the first place. And most sellers do not know why they're doing it. So the first thing to do is to understand that. The second part, to change any type of behavior long-term, is to look backwards and then look forwards. A lot of coaches out there tend to look at the now, the today, and then look forward. The best way to change behavior is to look backwards a little bit, not to dwell on your past, but to gain perspective and understanding, and then diving into your story and understanding why these were happening in the first place. And it's also important to rewrite your story, right? And so you have to be able to do that. If not, people are just operating from the emotional side of their brain, and they're just, nothing's ever enough. We need to close by the end of the quarter. They're coming across desperate. They're coming across anxious. And it's just not a really good game plan to build that long-term trust and deep value relationships with clients. So those are the first two things I would do, is to help them be aware that it's happening in the first place, why it could be happening, and then have them dive into their story and collect a lot of the belief systems that they've had and make that bridge and make that connection over to what their sales behaviors are.
Okay, while you were talking, I was thinking, and awareness is always number one. I agree with that. I think number two is identifying your failures and your mistakes. Like, almost got it. And then they went to a competitor and paid 10x what you thought was too much already. They signed up for 10x. And you did the me focus instead of the client centric folks. It's really like sitting with your failures and your disappointments and your near misses and your mistakes and all those things. And instead of running from them, hiding from them, is embracing them, and then dig into why. And that takes the research that you talked about. You got to go backwards. You got to look at your history. Got to take an inventory. This isn't probably the first time it ever happened. If you're 40 years old and you're in sales, it happened when you were 35. It happened when you're 28. It's happened your whole career. When you hit a certain, like commission level, it shows up again. But as long as you stay below that level, it doesn't show up. So it doesn't show up every day because you don't get those big ticket opportunities every day. And then the last one is reprogramming and rewriting. Because once you identify the why, you can make a decision. Is the why still valid today? It might have been valid when you were 13 and when you were asking your dad for money to go buy a new bike, but it's no longer valid because it's actually your money, it's your career, it's your job, and that doesn't matter anymore. And you're still living with a belief that you adopted when you were 13 at 40. What does that sound like? That makes sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. That's actually part of my program as well, is to look at business cost, past the cost of how these patterns and what the dollars and cents were in your business. So looking back at past opportunities and go, why did I not close this deal. And I mean, there are external factors and then there are internal factors. There's a lot of factors, right? But the C word I like to use is, what are some things that were in your control, right? Trump, implementing tariffs on China, you can't control that. Like, it's going to happen regardless of whether you like it or not, right? But what are things you can control? I know you well enough to where you talk about the bubble. What are some things that are in the bubble that you can control? Things that are outside the bubble, can't control, right? What are some things that are in your bubble that you can control? And how you see money and your mindset around it, if that's not worked on and addressed, those behaviors will show up over and over again. The drivers are all going to be there still. They might look a little different. They could be different above the surface, but the reason why this is happening is because of some of those common underlying drivers, the common denominators that are below the surface. And until you address that aha moment could actually change your life. It could change the perspective and the trajectory of where you're headed. And I'm a total believer in that. Like, my sales performance has drastically improved because I was able to address some of these things. I didn't know why I was doing them in the first place, but now I do. And now I help others do as well.
I would say something that I've personally experienced is, if you are attached to the outcome, you're toast. You have to detach yourself from the outcome. So in most business situations, it's a really good idea to bring the future to the present, meaning like, okay, you make this transaction, you buy this product or service, and you can almost foresee or forecast what's going to be beneficial or what are going to be the challenges for your client. It's okay to do that, except with money. You don't bring the future to the present with money, because when you do that, you start counting your chickens before they hatch. You start spending the commission before you got it. You start getting attached to the new car that you've been wanting to get. And this is going to enable you to get the new car. So I really feel like there's a couple of things. One is detaching from outcome, detaching from the future. And the second thing is bifurcating the value of the service from the value of the money. So when I'm doing sales, I don't mix them together because it makes it muddy. If someone's looking to buy a house, make an investment, and chase a dream, whatever it might be, we're going to focus on that. And what are the pros and cons? What's the benefits? What are the unintended consequences? What are all the things that can happen? And then the money discussion is another discussion, because when you put it together, I think it messes up, handicaps salespeople, because the money gets in the way. And that's when they start hitting those self-sabotaging behaviors like discounting and offering lesser cost alternatives, because the money's involved. Is that something that you find to be true or no?
It is. It's really funny that you said detached. It's something like 90% plus of salespeople struggle with. And salespeople get emotional because they lost the deal. The reason why they're bummed out about it, the biggest reason is because they were attached to the outcome, right? I think it's really important to ask a secondary question, which is, why are you attached to the outcome? Why can't you detach yourself? Detachment salesperson will never tell their manager, I am really attached to the outcome. They will never say that. But the symptom of being attached could be desperation, right? You could come across desperate because I need to close by the end of the quarter. My self-worth is tied to whether I close this deal or not. If I don't close that deal, that commission check is not in my bank account. And if that's not in my bank account, life is going to go downhill. All this is happening. The next question to ask after that is, why are you so attached? And so I'm going to go a little bit deeper here, which I don't share this level of depth, but like, imagine thinking you are never going to amount to anything. Imagine like having some of those sayings said to you. You're not going to amount to anything. You're going to fail in a lot of different areas in life. I know I've been told that and shown that amongst various people over the course of my life. And so to prove them wrong, I am going to have the fattest bank account. I'm going to be the number one sales guy in the company. I'm going to strive for all these achievements because the underlying reason why I'm doing all that is because I want to prove these people wrong. So that's where the fix has to be. If you want to be detached from money, if you want to not come across desperate, you have to understand why these behaviors are happening in the first place. So once I decided I don't need to show up for these people, I don't need to prove others wrong. I don't need a fat bank account to show the world that I'm successful. And as a Christian, like, I don't need all that stuff. I need Jesus. I need my community. I need my family. That's all I need. And they don't care who I am or what I do. They love me because of me, not because of what I have. Right. And so going through that process took some time, but then now I'm like, well, I don't need to show, I'm working hard because I've shifted from I need this money to now I want to use this money for good. Right. And that mindset shift, which took time, it wasn't easy, took time, was the game changer for me to go, I'm going to show up and serve the client the best way possible. And by the way, if I can't serve them and that forces me to walk away from a $25,000 commission check, so be it. I want what's best for the client, right? And the amount of trust you're able to build when you're able to do stuff like that and not just say yes to everything because you need that money is unparalleled. It's insane, right? So that's what I think about detachment is there's a reason why people are so attached to the outcome, and telling people to not be attached is not the answer, in my opinion.
I think there's two issues. One is you hit on the idea of we all have a relationship with money. And so it's almost like it's a friend or it's an enemy. It's somebody.
It's a core survival. It's a core survival thing. You can't live without money, right? And so if somebody
we need
comes
shelter
in
and all that stuff, so you need it.
Yeah, if somebody comes and takes your money away, like there's another level of like that's not going to happen. I'm gonna make sure I protect my castle, right? Somebody comes and keys your car. It's like I'm mad. That sucks, but it's not your life, right? And for us, money is like so tied to us. It's so close to us. It's part of our identity as a culture, as a human being. I mean, Jesus talks about money more than anything. He's mentioned money 2,000 times in the Bible, right? He knows how close it is to us, right? And so we're so attached to it. So telling a salesperson to just stop being attached to it is an impossible task. Instead of being detached from it, it's better to understand why you're attached from it and then being able to respond accordingly. We're not going to be detached from it, but it's important to understand how to respond to it in a very healthy way and saying, no, I want what's best for the client. There's plenty of money out there. Saying no to this guy doesn't mean it's the end of the world. There's plenty of money out there. But if you don't think there's plenty of money out there, you're going to hoard onto opportunities that you should just let die. And you're going to hoard onto opportunities that are bad fits in the first place. So it's really important to understand that the full detachment's, in my opinion, impossible, but understanding that attachment and being able to respond in a healthy way is the best way to go.
I believe that detachment is a spectrum, and the more reps you get, the more leads you have, the more opportunities you have, the more at bats you have, the less you can be attached. But if you're like, let's just use baseball. We're in the playoffs right now. If you just get to come in and pinch hit at the end of the game, you get one AB. You're going to be attached to the outcome because your whole game is going to be defined by one at bat. But if you're the leadoff hitter and you ain't coming out unless you get hurt, you know you're probably going to get 4 or 5, maybe even 6 at bats. So you ain't stressing on the first one because you know you got other ones. And I think in sales, it's the same way. If your pipeline is weak, if it's light, you're going to be attached. And the solution may not be a mindset solution, but it ends up affecting your mindset, which is the stronger your pipeline, the less you're married or attached to every single rep.
I think there's an aspect of that that's true, but that's still focused on the numbers aspect of things, like how much money you have, or how many opportunities you have in the pipeline. What's the expected value of your pipeline? Like I'd still focus on the numbers aspect of things. But if you believe that this is just a money belief, right? If you believe that, if you fear that you're going to run out of money, if you believe that no amount of money is ever going to be good enough, you're going to want to get to the next level constantly. And so there's still going to be a level of attachment regardless of how high of a high performer you are and how good of a salesperson you are compared to the rest of your team. So it's more internal. It's an internal compass versus an external situation. Most people think that salespeople that have a lot of money in the bank are going to be detached. It's the same very situation with the pipeline situation, right? If I have $5 million sitting in the bank, I should be detached from the outcome. but there's other drivers that could be contributing to why that person is attached, not just the numbers aspect. It could be self-worth. It could be trying to prove others wrong. I need to be number one on the team, right? If I'm number two, I'm a failure, right? What are some of the other factors and drivers that are causing people to be attached? I don't think it's just numbers. There's a number of opportunities. There's an aspect to it that's true, but there's other things at play. And I can't speak for everybody, right? And so it's important for people to dig in and go, this is why I'm so attached to the outcome, being able to understand it so that way you could have a healthier approach to it.
This may be one of those conversations where, it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg, that you can't really tell. Nobody knows. You could argue both sides. And the reason why I say that is because I 1000% agree with you that internal trumps external, because your subconscious programming is all internal. And that's where that 95% comes in. But guess where the data comes from to impact the subconscious belief? It's external. So it's like when you start a job and you have I've got a son right now in this situation. He's got scarcity. He's not getting a lot of reps. He hasn't had a sale in the last 3 weeks. The external is impacting his internal. So it is internal, but it's influenced by the external.
I would say the external can influence the internal, but there's still internal drivers, irrespective of the external, that are still going to be there. Just very high level example. I'm not going to name any names, but like I know people that have plenty of money, yet they're still scared to spend money freely despite having a ton of money. And that behavior was still present when they didn't have the money, right? So when they didn't have a lot of money, it made sense to be super stingy and be afraid to spend. But now fast forward 15, 20, 25 years, they have way more money than they have ever thought they would need. Yet those fear of spending money freely is still there. So the external data in their situation is like, hey, look at my bank account. I have plenty of money. Spending $300 on a steak dinner is not going to break the bank. Yet they're still super hesitant, right? So what are some of the emotional drivers that are causing the external to either be amplified? I think the external stuff can only amplify or make worse what is already inside.
Well, you just described Tom Brady in sports. It didn't matter how many Super Bowls he won, enough. He was always focused on the next one. And money and performance go together. The relationship that people have with performance and the relationship that they have with money are parallel. And in sports, you have two perspectives on performance. Either do your best or win. And, as a coach, I would ask a kid, would you rather do your best and lose or not do your best and win? And they all look at you like, I don't know. Well, most of them say, I'd rather win. Well, the way to have sustainable success is to do your best and work on your capabilities so that your best becomes better. And when you run into somebody that's just way better than you, it's okay. It wasn't meant to be, get ready for the next opportunity. That's the same way with sales. It's identically the same. We can make it has some differences, but it's the same. You really want to serve the client, give them the best solution for their problem, and the money comes along with it. And sometimes you talk them into working with a competitor because their solution's actually better than yours, or do you just want to get the sale? And I'll venture to say from my personal experience, just wanting to get the sale doesn't work.
It never works.
It's
because
better.
The arrow is still pointed on you, not the client. They're gonna taste it. There's a thing in the sales world called commission breath, and the client on the other side of the table can smell it from a mile away. You could say all the right things, but this is a famous saying, but buyers buy with emotion, then justify it with logic. Like they are buying with their emotions, and then they justify it with logic later. And those emotions, I could list off a wide range of emotions, but if they feel that your disposition is not to serve them in the best way possible, and the only thing you're thinking about is you and your needs and your commission check, they're going to smell that, and that erodes trust, and they end up walking away as a result of that.
Anybody
all the time.
Anyone that's shot for a car has seen that multiple times. The salesperson is not about selling you the car that you want. They're about selling the car that they want you to buy. Okay. You're a sales trainer and you get a handful of guinea pigs that are right out of college, no sales experience. They've come from good families. They don't have any scarcity. They don't have any like dominant negative mindset beliefs. How do you help them build a strong like behavioral pattern for their sales so that when they do face that one, maybe once a year, you get that one. And if you just get that one, it makes your year so that when they get in that situation, they've got the best possibility, the best probability to get it.
So the characteristics that you mentioned at the beginning, that's a unicorn. There's nobody that's going to have a perfect mindset and relationship. Even when you come from a good family with a lot of money, you could still feel like you're never enough. I've talked to people that...
Here's what I'm looking for, Dave. Here's what I'm looking for. Instead of doing an excavation project and figuring out what's wrong with you, building a program, a mental money program, so that if you do these things, you're going to have a lot more success than failure.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. So just very high level, sales is not coercion. It's not manipulation. It's service. What you're trying to do is you're trying to bring value to other people. People are hurting out there. Whatever their pain is could range from a lot of different things, right? The reason why sales is such a disrespected profession is because sellers think about themselves and not the client. When that happens, you're not able to solve the client's problems and you're not able to provide them with a solution. And sellers only think about themselves. So even if like their solution is not the best fit, all they want is the money, so they'll say yes to it. They'll manipulate, they'll lie, they'll coerce to get that sale. But if you're able to say, hey, Craig, I want what's best for you, and you told me X, Y, and Z, and if I could solve that problem, it's important for me to speak up about it because my goal is to make your life better. Sales is service, right? Sales is not coercion and manipulation. It's service. It's, I am here to help you, genuinely help you, right? So I think if you have that mindset and approach, you're going to have a very successful sales career. But if you are a product pusher and don't even like dig in and want to understand the client's pain points, their needs, or even through a series of question asking, helping them discover a pain point that they didn't even know existed. If you're just a product pusher, you're not going to be in the top level tier when it comes to sales professionals because those are the ones that are really making this relational and not transactional. My quick tip is going to be make sure you understand that sales is service, not coercion and manipulation.
There's no doubt. It's about solving other people's problems. If you take money out of the equation and you're talking to a friend, what do? You listen, you ask more questions, you find out what the problem is, you have them verify that it really is the problem they think it is really the problem. It's not something different. And then you give them a couple suggestions and you've been of service to your friend. And when you're in sales, you're doing the same thing, except for you're getting paid if they happen to buy your service or your product. So it's a friend game because it's not this person's my target. It's, hey, I'm trying to help a friend. So then maybe a friend you just met on the phone 2 seconds ago, but you've got to treat them that way. Okay.
I love that analogy.
One of the things I find, go ahead.
No, I love the analogy that you just did. How if you genuinely wanted to help a friend out, like Craig, if you called me, talking about a few things, I would drop everything to have that phone call with you. And at the end of the day, I would never say, Craig, you owe me, I'm gonna Venmo request you $500. I would never do that because we've established that friendship for many years now, right? But like the second money is involved, people can act in very interesting ways.
Yep. Okay, so let's talk about negotiations because sales is negotiations. And I did a lot of that over the years. And I did some great negotiations and I did some negotiations where I wish I could have do-overs, because I look back and go, man, didn't quite stand my ground possibly as much as I should have. But, we negotiate all the time. We negotiate, salespeople negotiate every day. They call it sales, but it's really negotiating. But everybody on the planet that works for a company negotiates once a year for their salary. They get to come in and have a review and sell themselves on hey, what they brought to the table this year, how bright the future is going to be with them in the company. And sometimes bosses will say something like, hey, Dave, we got a range of 5 to 10% salary increases. What do you think you deserve? What do most people say? They don't say, yeah, they pick something in the middle. 7.5, 8, maybe 9. They don't say 10. So how can they sell the company and sell the product and the service when they can't even sell themselves? So how do people, just somebody listening that might be in that situation this next week, what's your advice?
Couple things. I'm going to say this quote and hopefully it lands. The first sale you will ever make, is to yourself. If you don't believe in the things that are coming out of your mouth, that's also being backed up by how you speak, your tone of voice, your body language, how you share stories, how you listen. If those are not in alignment, that incongruence is going to be seen. And if you can't speak up for the value that you are bringing to the table with how much you want to get paid, I'm not saying that it's one-to-one, but are there remnants of some of those behaviors that are spilled over into some of the sales conversations that you have with your clients, right? You talk on negotiating. I was a negotiator in the Air Force, negotiated a lot of money. And these are government contracts. So these are lots of high dollars. So don't be overly impressed, but it's like over $3 billion. Nothing impressive because it was just massive contracts. But for me, I've learned a lot over the years. And negotiating happens. It's something that you can't avoid. But in an ideal situation, if you're able to talk about everything, bring all the stakeholders and all the decision makers and everybody that's involved throughout the process, the actual time for negotiating should be very minimal, if none. The reason why negotiating happens is because one party sees it one way and the other party sees it another. And it's also very important to understand that sellers have their own perceptions and beliefs and how they think about money. But the people on the other side also have their beliefs, their perceptions, how they think about money. And so if you have two of those people on each end of the table talking to each other, imagine like one having an abundance mindset, but the other has tremendous scarcity. I mean, you're not going to have alignment there, right? So if you are able to talk through everything and be open about things throughout the process, it reduces that time for negotiating because you've already done it in like micro negotiating sessions throughout along the way. But the reason why negotiating is hard is because it's not just you're assuming that the people on the other side, the company that tells you what your compensation is going to be, is perfect and sound and holy and everything that they're presenting to you. But the thing is, you might have scarcity and the company also might have scarcity. The executives might have scarcity and they're projecting their stuff onto you while you project your stuff onto them. That's why negotiating is so hard. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street. People are just throwing barbs at each other. No, you're getting paid way too much. No, I'm not getting paid enough. And so it's important to understand that executives and people on the other side also have their own relationship with money, thinking, I can't spend enough. I don't have enough to pay this guy. Whatever their why behind the what is also causing that negotiating to not be as smooth as it should be.
Well, here's what I would say about negotiating. You're absolutely right. Two-way street, all those things. There's a lot of micro conversations that are effectively negotiations. I always felt like, it took me a while to learn this, but the toughest negotiation was never with the team. And the best example I have is I had a defensive lineman with the Bengals that got a $43 million deal. And we were at like 42.8 and we were just trying to finish it off. And I said, man, if we can get to 43, are you good? He goes, oh my God, if you get to 43, that'd be a blessing. So get on the phone with the team and, we're having the conversation like we're almost done, just so close to getting to the finish line. If you can hit that 43 number, we could call it a day. And the team begrudgingly went to 43. So I call my client up and I go, bro, got it. Got what? The 43. First thing out of his mouth were 5 words. I about dropped the phone. He said, can you get me more? I'm like, bro, get you more. Are you kidding me?
I knew that was coming, Craig. It's never enough. So my question to that is, what's the difference between 42.8 and 43 for you? Not you, but
nothing.
The player.
Over.
Like, why does he want that? Why does he want that? And so that's the what. You got to dig behind that and get to the why.
No, I just think it wouldn't matter what the number is. It was never going to be enough. I could have been talking about 38 million, right? But I still believe, like, even in real estate and other things that I deal with, you have to negotiate with the person that's on your team. And so if you're in sales, sometimes if it's a group sales project of some nature, You've got to make sure that you're on the same page with the people you're, in bed with, so to speak, so that everybody knows when you get to the finish line where the finish line is, and the finish line doesn't keep moving. The hardest negotiations are when the finish line keeps moving. You never come to an end. You never get there.
It's important to understand who defines what the finish line is and their relationship with money. Everybody has a relationship with money, from the person at the bottom to the person at the way top. Every single person has a relationship with money. It's a two-way street. Why wasn't the Bengals willing to pay this money? You said begrudgingly. Why weren't they willing to pay? And on the flip side is, why did the player want so much? I'm not saying he shouldn't have a lot. He should make as much money as possible. But then for me, it's just fascinating the why behind why people do what they do, right? I'm just so fascinated by that. It's like my life mission now, to understand the why behind why people do what they do, which is, for this Bengals player, he wanted an extra $200,000. Dude, go for it, man. Like, I want him to get the $200,000. I want him to be the number one paid player on the team. But I was not surprised when you said, hey, can you get me more? And even after that guy's career is done, you're going to see some of those similar drivers impact how he makes decisions even after his career is done. And if that guy becomes a seller, yeah, I want him to make a ton of money, but is it going to impact how he shows up to clients? Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Maybe even so go ahead.
I was just going to say one other perspective on negotiations, and I think it's valid in sales too, is the best answer to any question is a question that enables the prospect to reframe what they're asking. Because a lot of times in negotiations and in sales, they ask a very broad question, and you could talk forever about something they don't care about. So you've got to ask them, to reframe it. And then within that, sometimes you got to ask them to reframe it again. Then you get it down to what they really want to talk about. And I think the most successful salespeople are the ones that have conversations about topics that are the most meaningful for the prospect. They just don't have long conversations. They have meaningful conversations because they're hitting the pain points. They're hitting the priorities of that particular prospect, and they're talking about the things that they really want to talk about.
Have you, like Wolf of Wall Street, have you heard of like the ABCs of closing? Like always be closing. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Expand.
So whenever you're in a sales conversation, they're like, oh, just always be closing, right? ABC, always be closing. The problem with that is you're always thinking about yourself. You're always thinking about the sale. You're always thinking about the commission check that's going to come afterwards. You're always thinking about you, not the client. So change it. So instead of always be closing, now I've come up with just two words: always be curious, always be caring. If you care about your clients and their success and their needs and how they are in certain position right now, and in order to get from point A to point B, they need X, Y, and Z, and you can provide them X, Y, and Z, man, that's what selling is. Like, it's providing a solution. If you're curious, it's like, tell me more about that, right? Usually when people talk, they don't tell the full truth. Another thing I've noticed is, how can I help you? Not you, but like, how can I help you? How can I serve you? Most people have no clue how to answer that because they don't even know their own needs, right? So it's the job of a salesperson to ask questions to help the client discover that. And in order to do that, you need to be curious. That needs to be your default setting. You need to be curious. But if some of these negative money beliefs are standing in the way, it's only going to cause the arrow to be pointed at you and not the client. And that's why so many salespeople fail constantly. And they're given all these tools to succeed, but none of it sticks because what's not addressed is the actual problem. You can't solve a mindset problem with a practical solution. You cannot solve a mindset problem with a practical solution.
I was brainstorming about ABC and turning it into CBA. And the only acronym
collective bargaining agreement.
No, it is the collective bargaining agreement in my world, but it's care before something. That starts with an A. Care before you ask. Yeah. Care before something. It's you need to be, caring and curious before something that starts with an A, where you're trying to get the business.
Yeah, I like that.
Being vulnerable for a minute. My pops was a gambler, gambled away a lot of stuff, a lot of family, land, and a lot of stuff. And so I always had this interesting relationship with gambling. where I didn't like to do it. And so a couple times I would go to the casinos with my clients back in the day and I'd win. And then I'd be walking out of the casino and I'd put all the money on the roulette table on black or red. Inevitably I would lose and I'd walk out with nothing. And so I felt better because I didn't feel icky about it because I just had this weird relationship with gambling. And today it's a rage, especially for young boys. And so obviously my sons are that age, and so they love to gamble on different things. What is your perception of gambling and the epidemic that we kind of have, whether it's gambling on sports, gambling at casinos, that a lot of young men have?
I can't unsee this across all areas of life. My focus is sales, but it still applies to every areas of life. It's still important to get to the why behind the what. The what is the gambling. The what is the behavior in sales. Whatever it is, what's the why behind the what? What's the door you got to open to that closet to see what's actually in it? What's actually driving it? What's that not monster? What's that thing in the closet that's driving what your behavior is?
Yep.
And, I'll get a little more woo-woo here, but like, what's the hole in the heart that you are trying to fill with gambling? I'm going to say another thing. So there's a hole in your heart. You're trying to fill that hole with gambling. Another thing I want to say, money is a weird thing, but what you thought the money would do for you isn't actually going to do its thing. So people buy lotto tickets and I'll spend like $1 or $2 just for fun, right? Every now and then. I actually would never want to win the lotto, by the way, but I do it for fun, like $1 or $2 every now and then. But a lot of people, when they buy those lotto tickets, they have a lot of dreams. With this money, I want to do this, this, and this, right? So people chase after money or things thinking it's going to actually do X for them. And then once they actually get it, they realize that it didn't fulfill its promise. So for gambling, hypothetically, most people don't win a lot of money. Some people do, but most people don't. Hypothetically speaking, my question would be, imagine you walked away with $15,000 after one night of gambling. What would that money actually do for you? And these are the questions I would ask. What do you think the money is going to do for you? What's going to make my life so much better? And just all these things. And then maybe even like bring in another scenario from the past where it's like, have you ever won something big or like chased after something thinking it's going to do one thing for you, but it actually didn't? And like kind of like get the parallels from there. So those are the two things I wanted to say is like, get to the why behind the what. And when it comes to money, it's not the money people are chasing. There's something else there's something else that they're trying to fill their heart with, fill that hole in their heart with. So like I said, I would say
addictions and money are synonyms in that regard. The hole that we have in our heart is, some people fill it with gambling, some people fill it with addictions, and one of them are the answer.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem with a lot of people. I know people that are severely addicted with that, but it's not the money they're chasing, because the result of gambling is to get that money, right? Typically, right? So my next question, my follow-up would be, what are you going to do with that money? What problem are you going to solve with that money? That's my follow-up question.
Yeah, they won't solve any problems.
Well, it's not, I know it's not going to solve any problems, but what's the perceived problem that you think that money is going to solve? And that's the fork in the road. That's the area that I would go down.
Well, what I see with gamblers is even when they win, they gamble it. So they really don't have anything that they're solving. They may have an intention to solve, but they don't use it to solve, because what 15 can do, 30 can do more. So it's like they're always trying to get more, and they never spend the money on whatever they said they wanted to spend the money on. They just lose more money. So I just looked at our time. Okay, Dave, what did I not ask you that you were hoping I'd ask you that you would like to share?
No, this is great. You asked everything. Free flowing, organic conversation. That's all I could ask for.
Okay. If somebody out there wants to have you come in and speak to their organization, train their salespeople, where can they find you?
Yep. So my website is davewon, WON.co. Right. So davewon.co. I'm on LinkedIn. So Dave Won on LinkedIn. And those are the two best ways to get a hold of me. I speak to high performing sales teams, sales leaders, and the industries that I serve have been wide and it varies, but high performing sales teams is who I serve.
Well, I want to thank everybody for listening to Pro Mindset today. I hope you learned a nugget of wisdom about the money mindset and how you just being aware that we all have a relationship with money and why we do what we do. And maybe your partner saves everything and you spend everything, or whatever the case may be. If you're trying to get on the same page, maybe take a peek at behind the curtain a little bit and see the why behind your behaviors. Per Dave One. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
It's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.